Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnock. This is another historic church in Nottinghamshire. This is the church of St Lawrence, Thorpe by Newark. It's not very far from East Stoke, and it was one of two medieval villages called Thorpe in Nottinghamshire. The other one's now fallen down, so this is the only one that's left. The church here has medieval origins, but by 1869, it was in such a poor state, the parishioners were taking their umbrellas to church when it rained, not to go to and from the church, but to have them over their heads during the services. So the church was rebuilt. Other than the tower, which is medieval, has some 15th century and earlier elements to it, the rest of this building is entirely from 1869. And it was restored in 1989 thanks to a generous donation, generous bequest from Florence Mabel Johnson. So this is St Lawrence's Thorpe, or Thorpe by Newark, strictly speaking, but it's only Thorpe in the county, so Thorpe is fine. Right, as per usual, we start at the west end, in this case in the Tower Arch. And you will see that this is a single space, single structure. There is no distinction between nave and chancel, because after all, if you're rebuilding your church and your resources are limited, then something like this is much easier to build. You don't have to bother with a chancel arch or anything like that. You don't have to have one roof. So it's simplicity that is required by the state of the building. The font is quite simple. You can see a nice font cover. The bowl is small. That's not obviously the original stem for that bowl, because that stem is too big. This appears to be a piscina or a holy water stoup. It's a piscina. Would have been in the chancel of the old church. And that again suggests a Norman origin for the original building here. Nice tile floor. Pews. Again, something that I've noted before. Picture of the king as the supreme governor of the Church of England. He's there wearing the uniform of Admiral of the Fleet. Copy of Holman Hunt's Light of the World. If you can't get a stained glass window with it in, just have a copy of the print. Pulpit. Chancel screen, of course, very important to say this is the chancel over here. And here we have memorial to John Tomlin of Thorpe. Tomlin's had quite a lot of influence around here. And we go through into the chancel, which has the two stained glass windows in the church, one on the east and one on the south side. And here we have memorial to John Bainbridge Wood of Kitchener's Fighting Scouts, who was killed in South Africa in 1901, killed in action. Another Tomlin, Elizabeth Tomlin up there. Looking west, we've got that rather small tower arch, which undoubtedly is quite helpful. Priest door, of course, here, and it's a nice bit of stained glass memorial to a former rector here. St Lawrence in the middle, flanked by St Luke and St Cecilia. And there we have the women at the tomb and I am the resurrection and the life. Interesting text, of course, because we have not the scene at the tomb of Lazarus, but we have the women at the tomb. Here is a medieval effigy of a woman, rather damaged, hacked about a bit. As usual with these, she has a dog at her feet. There is a memorial to former incumbents, and these are ones that were carried over from the old church when it was demolished and this one was built. A nice floor here with its fleur-de-lis tiles. So turn around and there we have it. It is an area where clearly there were more people here in the Middle Ages than there are today, even. There's more villages and more churches than are necessary, and many of the churches have been reduced in size, as at Thorpe, and I'm not sure how big the old church here was. The tower isn't very big, but still. Cotham up the road, which I hope to go to some future date, is now redundant, and that's just a fragment of a church, and there's basically no village there at all. There's just a few scattered houses. So that's the inside here at Thorpe even. I'll get there eventually. So it's just a Thorpe, by Newark. Newark, of course, being Newark-on-Trent. Newark is one of those names that just means something was newly built here. And so that is the inside here. Let's turn around. Nice old Bible there, and the pulpit, and then the chancel. So we'll have a look at the outside now. So we're outside at St Lawrence's, Thorpe now. You can see here this long structure that is the Victorian combined nave chancel, and the little tower with its little pyramidal roof, which is the surviving medieval bit. So we'll have a bit of a look around. It's a simple building, not a huge amount to see, but it is an interesting example of its type, this small Victorian church. It was built to look fancy, but not to cost a lot of money. And so, of course, we're on the south side here. You see the priest's door there, and the porch, and then there's the chancel. So it is, as we saw inside, it's a very simple building, and it's two practically equal sized spaces. One is the chancel, the other is the nave. Nave being slightly bigger. The old rectory, of course, next door. There's now somebody's house. It's slightly awkward because you've got to go through the front drive to get to the church, but there we are. They knew about it when they bought it. Yew tree, very often found in churchyards, particularly old ones. And of course, this is an old churchyard because that font suggests this is a Norman foundation, although only the tower remains from the Middle Ages. And the Victorian building was undoubtedly cheaper than restoring what was probably quite a tumble-down medieval structure. You've got the weathercock on the top, the weather vane shaped like a cockerel, and the two windows in the nave here. And yes, that rather lovely tower. Slightly crooked, but I suspect that the ground here, it's one of the things in the Middle Ages is that they don't really have geological surveys. They can do some sort of surveying work, but it's not a huge amount. You can look at that stonework there, and then we've got this darker stone, which is of course the cheaper stuff, the stuff that's found locally. And this is a rectory, and as I've said, a rector, what's the difference between a rector and a vicar? Well, as an old clergyman told me many years ago, the difference is the rector collected the tithes. The vicar, he's a vicarius, he's in the place of the chap who gets the tithes, or the organisation that gets the tithes. So rector here, and there's the porch. You can see the distinction, the difference between the medieval work and the Victorian church attached to that medieval tower. So there we have it, Thorpe by Newark, St Lawrence's. It's December, so not an awful lot of hours of daylight today, so it's just getting a bit dark at the moment. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.